The New York Islanders have some goaltending issues and they need to address them right away. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You could start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets. If you win that first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. I hope everybody enjoyed their holiday, and I hope the Islanders can bounce back and overcome the terrible performance they had Monday night in the final game before the holiday break. But before they return, they have some issues that just plain need to be addressed, and we'll start between the pipes. Goaltending. It is a problem for this team. And look, right now, Ilya Sorokin has started 11 straight games for the New York Islanders. And in those 11 starts, he has a record of 5-5-1, which is certainly not great. But the goals against average, 3.30. The save percentage, only .882. All throughout these 11 games, Marcus Hogberg, who has been the backup since Semyon Varlamov went on IR and now on LTIR, has come in relief in a grand total of 2 games. And I have to say, I was surprised that Patrick Roy did not replace Ilya Sorokin in the third period of Monday night's disastrous loss to Buffalo. I mean, he got traded off the Montreal Canadiens in part because of something similar that happened to him in a game in his final contest in Montreal. And look, Hogberg has played 2 periods. He's faced 17 shots, and he has stopped all of them. And in the preseason, whenever we saw Marcus Hogberg, he looked really good. He looked solid. I am not saying he is the second coming of Patrick Roy, the goaltender. I am not saying that he is, the next elite goalie in this league. But here's the thing. Lou Lamoriello, over the summer, signed Marcus Hogberg to a deal, citing the fact that last year, when the choices down in Bridgeport were essentially Ken Appleby, who ended up being called up and played, I believe, 1 period during about 14 games when he was the call-up, Ken Appleby or Jakub Skarek. And neither of them had real NHL experience, and neither of them were playing particularly well in the AHL. They were not NHL ready. So you go out and you sign Hogberg, who has NHL experience, played with the Ottawa Senators, and would be considered, a solid third goalie in the organization for a veteran. And no, Hogberg has not been outstanding in Bridgeport, no doubt. But can he give you a start? You had a back-to-back. You had 2 games against the dreadful, struggling Chicago Blackhawks. You had a game against the struggling Buffalo Sabres. There were a lot of opportunities for Patrick Roy and the Islanders brass to let Marcus Hogberg start a game. And clearly, based on their actions, they either don't trust Hogberg or they're so desperate to win every possible game that they feel like not putting Sorokin out there will compromise their chances of winning. Which, if you think about it deep down, also means we don't trust Marcus Hogberg. You cannot take a goalie who is coming off back surgery, and because of the cones of silence surrounding the Islanders organization, we don't know whether it was minor, major, moderate back surgery. We don't know when the surgery took place, except that it was sometime after the playoffs ended at the end of April or the very beginning of May, and sometime before training camp started. But you're taking this goalie and you're wearing him down in November and December. And it just doesn't make any sense. So, look, we don't know. There's been no update as to when Semyon Varlamov will be back. And if and when he does return, how heavy a load he can shoulder once he gets back. But I could tell you right now, if Varley is going to miss more time, and by more time, I even mean like another week of action. If you have a back-to-back coming up this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, against the Pittsburgh Penguins, if you don't trust Hogberg to start one of those two games, and Varley isn't ready to come off LTIR, you're ruining your goalie. You're wearing down your goalie. And the statistics already say he's not playing as well after starting 11 straight games. Any chance you have of making some kind of a run and getting back into the playoffs, or, I'll take it a step further. Patrick Roy has stated on a few occasions this year, we left our goalie out to dry. We hung him out to dry. We didn't support him. Think about the win in Chicago where they barely held on and didn't play good defense in the third period, and the Blackhawks turned a 5-2 game into a 5-4 game and almost tied it. You are hanging him out to dry by playing him over and over and over again in the middle of the season when he needs to be paced to a point. You don't want him playing 60 games, 65 games. He won't be at his best. And he may say, I feel fine. And he may say, I want to go out there and be the guy every night. But you know what? Sometimes coaching is knowing your players better than they know themselves. And putting the brakes on the I always want to be in between the pipes every game. If the Islanders don't trust Marcus Hogberg, number one, this was therefore a bad signing by Lou Lamoriello, if that's the case. But B, okay, fine. You don't trust Marcus Hogberg, go out and get a goalie who you do trust to play a few games for the Islanders until Semyon Varlamov is ready to return. It is foolish of the Islanders to keep running Sorokin into the ground the way they're doing it right now. It cannot continue this way. And the Islanders' lack of organizational depth and the lack of foresight on this team right now is just frustrating. And, I have said, everydayers, you will be familiar with the fact that I have said that Lou Lamoriello doesn't seem to have a plan He seems to be putting out fires, many of them of his own making. And I can go back to, having to get rid of Nick Leddy and Devon Taves because there's no cap space. And, some of these sort of desperation moves, losing Oliver Wahlstrom for nothing, just like a couple of weeks ago. Desperation, because there's no depth in the organization. Injuries hit. You got the LTIR. You come off LTIR. Guys are coming off LTIR. Oh my gosh, we need to free up cap space. We need to make a move. Boom. You just lost a former first-round pick for nothing. Get in front of these things before they become emergencies. You now have a situation where either you don't have a goalie you trust, or your coach is just running the starting goalie into the ground. You've got to give him a rest. You have got to get a guy who can come in and play. And let me take it a step further. Bridgeport, they could use a goalie too. Because that team, and we will have our farm report a little bit later on in today's show, needs reinforcements as well. They are in last place in their division by a wide margin. So let's solve this goaltending problem one way or the other. Either give Hogberg some starts and say, okay, we're going to see what this guy can do, or go out and get someone who you feel you do trust before Ilya Sorokin ends up hurt again, reduced effectiveness again. And think about this. If you're wearing him down in December, what's he going to be like in March or April? And will it still matter by then? These are things you want to avoid. And this is why you need to find a way to get another goalie a start or two by this weekend. Starting Ilya, you could talk to me all you want about, oh yeah, we had, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off. Great. Don't run your goalie into the ground. Let's see what Lou Lamoriello and Patrick Roy do with this situation, but it's got to get better. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We're going to discuss how the Islanders clean up this mess. And we'll talk a little more about the long term. We'll have our weekly farm report on all things Bridgeport Islanders. Plus, for our Islanders birthday of the day, a center who played with the Islanders from 1996-97 through the 1998-99 season. Let's see if you can guess who this Toledo, Ohio native who was drafted in the first round by the Bruins is. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. GameTime is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it's the perfect gift. GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. My favorite feature on the GameTime app is the view from your seat. You go on the app, and you get a panoramic view from your seat before you purchase the tickets, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Just download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. So what is the plan? Because Monday's 7-1 loss to Buffalo kind of exposed this team, okay? This team, at best, is extremely inconsistent. And they need to figure out that there's no excuse. Everyone was healthy. Everyone was back. This team needs to figure out what happens next. Because clearly, clearly, and we've discussed it before, everydayers, clearly, at best, this team will either barely make or miss the playoffs. And if they do, it's going to be similar to the last 2 years where it's you win one game, you win 2 games, but you get eliminated in the first round. And there is no way, after watching this team for the first 35 games, we're closing in on the halfway mark of the season. There is no way that the New York Islanders can be considered a cup contender. So what is Lou Lamoriello going to do, assuming that he keeps his job through the end of the season? And I expect that he probably will. And the answer has to be, barring the next 6 weeks being lights out Islander hockey that we haven't seen from this team in a few years, you got to start trading guys away. You got to make this team younger, faster, and more skilled. And the 2 names at the top of the list who are on expiring contracts right now are Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. And I know Lou. Lou is going to want to extend one or both of them because that's the way he thinks. And neither one of them is young anymore. They're both on the wrong side of 30. Nelson has cooled off after a very, very good start. Palmieri has probably been one of the more consistent players on this team all year. But think about it. When you get closer to the trade deadline, guys like Nelson, guys like Palmieri, you can get a first-round pick or a younger player and a pick or a prospect and a pick. You can start the rebuild or the retool right now. You can accelerate it. You can cut down the time it takes to fix the problems of this team. And let's face it, both players have modified no trade clauses where they can submit a list of 15 or 16 teams that they won't go to. So you're cutting your possibilities roughly in half. But you got to find a way. And sometimes guys will waive no trade clauses. You've got to start moving on from some of these older guys. J.G. Pageau, the kind of player who a playoff contender loves. He'll kill penalties. He can check and play solid defense for a forward. He will win you faceoffs. He's also 32. Again, it's asset management. J.G. Pageau's value will only go down from here. He has one more year left on his contract at $5 million. He's going to score 35 to 40 points this season, most likely. Save $5 million off next year's cap hit and move him if you can. There are other guys who teams might be interested in. Anders Lee is your captain. He has $7 million cap hit coming up next year. A $7 million cap hit for a guy who is 34 years old and is playing better this year, although Lee is also kind of cooling off as of late. And I know he's your captain, and I love all these guys. I mean, I appreciate everything they've done for the organization, the success they've contributed to, the long playoff runs, the community involvement. It's not personal. It's only business, right? But if you can get a taker for Lee, again, at the deadline, contending teams would love a guy who's worn the C, who scored 30 goals, who can give them a contribution. And you know what? Yeah, Lee has revived his career this year. He's played better this year than maybe he has in 2 or 3 years. But he's 34. The odds are that he's not going to be able to sustain this, that the inevitable decline will happen sooner rather than later. And when you base all of this on the idea that it is better to trade a player a year too soon than a year too late. If you get somebody offering you a solid prospect or a first-round pick or a 24-year-old player who has a similar skill set to Anders Lee with upside potential, you got to make the move. Because this team, unless you break up that old gang of mine, first of all, you can eliminate some of the complacency. You could change the chemistry in the room. You can add accountability, which this team doesn't seem to have enough of. And I'll take it a step further. If Patrick Waugh is going to remain your coach, he has a lot of success in juniors coaching younger players. Why not get him a few younger players who he knows how to coach and maximize their ability and development? This has to be the course. And you can't just have the same old attitude. If you have time, use it. Lou, you're running out of time. And if Lou Lamoriello will not retool or rebuild, then the Islanders ownership has to step in and say, you know what, Lou? Thank you for everything you've done. You want to be our executive president in charge of hockey operations or whatever title you want to give him. Let him do it. Let him be the advisor to the president or the GM or whatever title you want to give Lou Lamoriello. But if he's not going to retool, if he doesn't realize that this core peaked 3 or 4 years ago and is on the downswing, and it's only going to get worse if you keep the core together, you haven't won a playoff series in 3 years plus, then he can't continue as the GM. Because whether he's 50 or 30 or 82, the GM's job is to maximize the team, their present, and take into consideration their future. And right now, he's neglecting that future and letting the present get worse and the future much worse if he fails to act. So let's see whether or not ownership and Lou Lamoriello and Patrick Waugh can figure out how to expedite the retool, because there are players you can build around here, and the Islanders have to make some decisions before the trade deadline. All right, we have got more to get to on today's show. We have our weekly farm report on all things Bridgeport Islanders. I know we usually do it on Wednesday, but we're doing it today because we had our special crossover with Hadi Kalakesh of Locked On NHL Prospects going on a deep dive on the Islanders prospect pool. If you missed that episode yesterday for the holiday, please check it out. Some great insight into the Islanders prospects. We've got all that, plus our Islanders birthday of the day coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It is thrilling. And Islander fans, use your knowledge of hockey and the Islanders to check out some exciting odds on FanDuel. Check out all the opportunities for some exciting bets for this weekend's home and home with the Penguins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. You can become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, it's time for our weekly farm report as we discuss all things Bridgeport Islanders. And the Islanders played 2 games last week since our last farm report. And the results were mixed, which actually is a big improvement for this Islanders team. The first game was a 6-2 loss to the Charlotte Checkers, with Tice Thompson and Gemel Smith finding the back of the net. William Dufour had 2 helpers, but Charlotte just too much. John Leonard had a hat trick. Both Henrik Tikkanen and Jakob Skarek were in goal as the Islanders fell. But facing the same team the very next night, the Islanders did bounce back, beating the Checkers by a score of 4-1. 4 different Islanders scoring: Brian Pino, Liam Foudy, Chris Terry, and Alex Jeffries netting goals. Jakob Skarek making 29 saves and only gave up 1 goal in the third period that prevented the shutout. It ended a 9-game losing streak from the Bridgeport Islanders, so hopefully they can get back on track. Right now, there is a tie for the team lead in points between Brian Pino with 23, 15 of those goals, and he leads the team in that category. Chris Terry, 19 assists. He has 23 points as well. Alex Jeffries is next with 20 points, 7 goals, 13 assists. Frederick Karlstrom has 9 goals, 13 points. Mark Gatcomb, 8 goals, 14 points. And Travis Mitchell now leading all defensemen with 10 points, 4 goals, 6 assists in 21 games. So again, the Bridgeport Islanders struggling in the standings. They remain in 8th place in the Atlantic Division of the AHL, 11 points behind 7th place Springfield. And Springfield has a game in hand. So, Bridgeport not looking like a promising team as of right now. Only one other team in the AHL has a worse point percentage than the Bridgeport Islanders, but hopefully they can build on that road win against Charlotte that they did on Sunday. Now, they are off until Friday night. No games during the week, especially with the holiday on Wednesday. But this Friday at 7 o'clock, a home game against the Providence Bruins, 7 o'clock Eastern time. Again, if you want to catch the action, head on up to Bridgeport, where you could see some of the Islanders prospects play right now. Saturday night, a road game. They go to Springfield to face the Springfield Thunderbirds. That's a 7:05 start, and both of these games are available on AHL TV. Remember, we do our weekly farm report on all things Bridgeport Islanders every Wednesday. Again, because of the holiday, we moved it to Thursday this week, but make sure you catch that so you can keep up to date on some of the Islanders' top prospects. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and we're a day early here, but December 27th will be the 53rd birthday of former Islanders center Brian Smolinski, the native of Toledo, Ohio. First-round pick of the Bruins back in 1990, 21st overall pick. Spent 4 years at Michigan State and made his NHL debut late in the 92-93 season with Boston. Later played for Pittsburgh and then joined the Islanders for the 96-97 season, where he scored 28 goals and 56 points. Played 3 years with the Isles, then played for the Kings, the Senators, the Blackhawks, the Canucks, and the Canadiens before finishing his career in the minor leagues. Brian Smolinski played in 1,056 NHL games, 274 goals, 651 points, and 606 penalty minutes. Add 23 goals and 52 points in 123 playoff games, but none of those were with the Islanders. One of his better games as an Islander, March 29th, 1997, Islanders hosting Boston at the Nassau Coliseum. Jim Carey gets the start for Boston, while Tommy Salo is the starting goalie for the Islanders. And our Islanders birthday of the day, Brian Smolinski opens the scoring just a minute 24 into the game. His 23rd of the year. Robert Reichel and Kenny Janssen with the assists. And it's 1-0 Islanders. With the score, 3-0 Islanders late in the period. Smolinski scores again. Ziggy Palffy and Robert Reichel with the assists. After one period, it's 4-1. And Smolinski, in the second period, assists on a goal by Ziggy Palffy. The Islanders go on to rout the Bruins by a score of 8-2, a rare big win in the Fisherman jerseys for Brian Smolinski. 2 goals, 1 assist. He had a +4, and he scored on both of his shots. 16 saves for Tommy Salo. Eric Fischel finished up the game, but the Islanders cruise to a big victory. Brian Smolinski, a solid middle six center who spent 3 years on the island. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, we are back Friday as we preview this weekend's 2 games against the Pittsburgh Penguins, so make sure you join us for that. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you could email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game, so join me for some instant insight and analysis. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.